Carl Jung never said your birth month defines your personality, but somehow millions of people believe he did. You've seen the videos, maybe you even shared one. Born in April, you're a warrior. September, you're the analyst. November, you're the alchemist. The words feel profound: archetypes, energy, soul path. It sounds like psychology. It smells like truth. But it isn't. It's a beautifully packaged distortion, one that feels comforting in a world that's deeply uncertain. And that's the real danger. Because if you let a birth month horoscope in Jungian clothing define who you are, you stop asking harder questions. You stop becoming, and maybe you didn't notice it happening. Maybe you're just tired of trying to figure yourself out while being told who you should be by algorithms, astrology apps, and bite-sized spiritual wisdom that never really scratches beneath the surface. You're not alone. Right now, millions of young people, especially men caught between freedom and expectation, are quietly drifting through a fog of false identity. And the worst part? They think they've found themselves, when all they've done is downloaded a persona. Let's undo that. Let's go to the source. Let's talk about what Jung really said, and what you're not supposed to hear. The danger is not that you don't know who you are. The danger is that someone else told you and you believed them. Myth 1. Carl Jung created a birth month personality system. Let's begin with the most seductive lie. That Jung, the man behind shadow work, archetypes, and the unconscious, believed that the month you were born into determines your soul's essence. You've seen the charts. You've heard the lines. If you're born in January, you're a sage. March, you're the reborn. November, the alchemist. It's packaged beautifully. It feels right. But let's be absolutely clear. Carl Jung never created, endorsed, or even hinted at a 12-month psychological typology. There's no system, no calendar of archetypes, no psychological zodiac in any of his writings. Not in the collected works, not in Man and His Symbols, not in his private letters, not even in the Red Book. And still, this fantasy spreads. Why? Because people are desperate for meaning. Especially when meaning is served in short, poetic affirmations that require no inner work. It's easier to be assigned a label than to confront the chaos inside. And if Jung were alive to see his legacy turned into a BuzzFeed quiz, he would likely call it what it is: projection. Your mind assigning symbolic depth to something that has none. Myth 2. Jung believed archetypes are personality types. Here's how the distortion works. Take a deep concept, flatten it, turn it into a brand. Jung's archetypes, the shadow, the anima, the hero, the wise old man, were never meant to be types of people. They're not personality categories. They are symbolic forces inside all of us, shaping dreams, fears, instincts, stories. You don't become an archetype because you were born in October. You meet them in dreams, in crisis, in death, in love. They're not fixed traits, they're thresholds, yet social media has turned them into cheap identities. You're the magician, you're the warrior, you're the lover, babe. No, you are not an archetype. You're being called into relationship with it. The danger? Once you identify as the archetype, you stop seeing what it's trying to show you. You mistake the mirror for your face. Jung himself wrote, "The archetype is a tendency to form representations, not the representation itself. But the internet sells you the representation and buries the actual work." Myth 3. Jung believed your birth season shapes your personality. This one hinges on a single elegant sentence, constantly misquoted online. We are born at a given moment, in a given place, and, like vintage years of wine, we have the qualities of the year and of the season in which we are born. Sounds like astrology, right? But read it again. Jung is using poetic metaphor, not clinical theory. He's talking about the symbolic rhythm of time, not a diagnostic framework. He was introducing an ancient Taoist text about inner alchemy, not giving birth month psychology to YouTube creators. He never mapped psychological traits onto months. He never said, winter births are introverts or summer babies are bold. That's not Jung, that's marketing dressed in archetype cosplay. Myth 4. Jung supported personality determinism. Here's the most dangerous myth of all, that your psyche is fixed, predetermined, and once labeled, you are revealed, case closed. This is spiritual fast food, quick answers, instant identity, no digestion required. And that's exactly what modern Jungian astrology offers. But Jung's entire life's work was the opposite. He built a psychology based on transformation, on descent into the unconscious, on individuation, the process of becoming whole through self-confrontation. Jung believed you were born into a symbolic web, yes, but it was only the starting point. Your trauma, your dreams, your fears, your shadows, they reshape you every day. If you stop growing because someone said, "You're a visionary because you're born in February," you've just walked away from the most sacred part of Jungian thought. Individuation means becoming an individual, and insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self, not a type, not a trope, a self. We don't fall for these myths because we're stupid. We fall because we're tired, because the journey inward is dark, long, and terrifying, and a shortcut, even a fake one, feels better than standing still. But Carl Jung didn't hand out shortcuts. He handed you a lantern and said, "Go down there, face what lives in you." The myths are easy, but the real journey, that's where your soul is waiting. A lie that comforts you is still a lie, and over time it costs more than you think. 1. They give you the illusion of self-awareness without the work. You scroll past a 30-second video. Born in September? You're analytical, reserved, focused? You nod. That's me. You feel seen. But here's the problem. That feeling isn't self-discovery, it's self-confirmation. And confirmation is dangerous, because it tricks you into thinking you've done the work, that you've looked inward, faced yourself, understood your nature, but you haven't. You've just downloaded a personality template that feels accurate enough to stop questioning. Carl Jung didn't want you to feel seen, he wanted you to see yourself, and that's much harder. Real self-awareness is uncomfortable. It takes silence, it takes time, it takes watching yourself sabotage the very thing you said you wanted, and asking why. The birth month archetype myth bypasses all of that. It's fast food for the soul, and like fast food, it keeps you full just long enough to stay malnourished. 2. They reinforce a deterministic mindset and kill your capacity to change. This myth doesn't just give you a label, it hands you a cage. Because once you believe that being born in July makes you emotionally nurturing, or that March means you're reborn energy, you begin filtering all of your behaviors through that lens. Worse, you start excusing patterns that you should be challenging. I push people away, but that's just part of being a Scorpio soul. I have a temper, but I'm a warrior archetype. That's not self-understanding. That's avoidance dressed up as insight. Jung warned against this kind of inner laziness. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When you live by a birth month identity, you confuse unconscious programming with destiny. You stop asking, "Why am I like this?" and you start saying, "I've always been this way." But that's a lie. You haven't always been this way. You've been trained, wounded, shaped, and you can evolve, unless you choose not to. 3. They replace the hard path of becoming with the comfort of performance. The most seductive thing about archetype myths is that they give you a character to play. And in the era of constant self-curation, TikTok bios, dating profiles, personal brands, that's exactly what most people want. You don't have to find out who you are, you just have to act the part. So if your feed says you're a visionary, you start talking more about ideas than feelings. If it says you're the builder, you become obsessed with structure and control, not because that's your nature, but because you've been cast in that role. Jung called this the inflation of the persona, when the mask becomes your identity. The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself and others think one is. When you fall in love with the role, you lose the actor, and when the performance starts to crack, you have no idea who's underneath. 4. They distract you from the one confrontation that truly matters, your shadow. Here's the hardest truth. Everything you avoid in yourself, the envy, the rage, the addiction, the guilt, lives in what Jung called the shadow. And the shadow is not something you can archetype your way out of. It shows up in how you sabotage relationships, in the thoughts you pretend you don't have, in the part of you that doesn't want to grow, just wants to win. Birth month personality theories offer a detour. They point you toward light, positive traits. They give you poetic names and noble titles, but they rarely say, "You're manipulative, you're insecure, you need control because you're terrified of being seen," because that would scare you away. And yet, that's exactly where your freedom begins. Jung believed real transformation only begins when you confront the part of yourself you least want to see, and he made no promises that it would be comfortable. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. If your self-discovery path never hurts, never humbles you, never breaks a part of your illusion, it's probably not self-discovery. It's just another fantasy. 5. They make you feel certain, in a world that demands you stay uncertain. Here's the final tragedy. These myths promise certainty in a time when no one knows who they are. And that certainty is addictive. If you're 25, stuck in a job you hate, watching your friends get married while you scroll for answers at 2 a.m., you don't want nuance. You want something to hold on to. And when someone says, "You're lost because you're a reborn soul from merch," you exhale. It makes sense. It feels safe. But Jung didn't want you safe. He wanted you awake. He believed that truth lives in uncertainty, and that real identity is not found, it's forged. Certainty might calm your anxiety for a while, but it also kills the mystery, and without mystery, nothing grows. The myths are comforting. That's why they work. But comfort is not the same as truth. And Jung, the real Jung, wasn't in the business of making you feel better. He was in the business of waking you up. You don't need more aesthetic psychology. You need the courage to meet the part of you these myths are distracting you from. And that part? It's waiting, right where you stopped looking. Carl Jung wasn't trying to tell you who you are. He wasn't in the business of handing out identities. He wasn't building typologies to fit you into. What he offered, if you were brave enough to take it, was a mirror that didn't reflect your curated self or your surface-level traits, but the parts of you you've buried, rejected, or never even dared to look at. And in that mirror, he didn't want you to see a fixed image. He wanted you to see movement, conflict, contradiction, because that's where truth lives, in the uncomfortable in-between. Archetypes for Jung were not brands, not labels, not boxes. They were living, moving patterns of human experience that existed long before you were born and will outlast you. The mother, the warrior, the trickster, the shadow. These were not roles you were meant to adopt. They were energies that shaped you without your permission. His goal wasn't for you to pick one and claim it. His goal was for you to realize they all live in you, and that each one becomes dangerous the moment you pretend it doesn't. The internet tells you you're the magician, and you believe it, because you're looking for something solid to stand on in a chaotic world. But Jung would have asked, what's the magician hiding? What power are you abusing? What shadow are you refusing to see? He didn't want to crown you with a title. He wanted to strip you of illusions. In his own words, the archetype is a force, and it is the task of consciousness to become aware of it. You don't get to wear it like a costume. You have to wrestle with it. You have to suffer it. You have to integrate it. And that process, what Jung called individuation, isn't pretty. It's not aesthetic. It's not something you can buy a course for or post about in a self-help carousel. It's the slow, painful becoming of a person who is no longer owned by their unconscious mind. Individuation isn't about learning who you are. It's about surviving what you find. It means noticing the lies you've told yourself just to get by. It means facing the part of you that manipulates, the part that hides, the part that secretly wants control. It means becoming whole, not perfect. That's why all of these birth month identity systems are so tempting. They offer a shortcut. They give you a curated story. And if you're lost, if you're in pain, if your sense of self is fragmented by too many years of trying to live up to what the world expects of you, that story can feel like relief. But Jung never promised relief. He promised meaning. And meaning doesn't come through comfort. It comes through collapse. Jung understood that your soul isn't born in clarity. It's born in conflict, in paradox, in the collision between what you think you are and what you truly are underneath. Most people think they're afraid of not knowing who they are. But the truth is, what they fear most is finding out. Because what you find isn't always flattering. It's rarely easy, and it's never finished. He wrote, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That's it. That's the whole path. You want to know who you are? Go to the place you've been avoiding. Go to the part of you that sabotages your relationships. Go to the dreams that wake you up at 3 a.m. Go to your shame, your rage, your emptiness. Go to the thing that scares you. That's where the self begins. When Jung said we are born at a given moment, and we have the qualities of the year and of the season in which we are born, he wasn't giving you a personality diagnosis. He wasn't validating astrology. He was speaking poetically about rhythm, resonance, environment, not fate. Jung believed the moment you're born matters symbolically, yes, but symbol is not destiny. Symbol is invitation, an invitation to go inward, not outward, to excavate, not decorate. And in that excavation, you don't find a singular identity. You find a labyrinth, a broken mirror. You find the voices of your childhood, your culture, your trauma, your unlived life. You find contradictions that make no sense, desires that terrify you, patterns that shame you, but also, if you stay long enough, you find the beginnings of something real, something earned, something not given by your birth chart, but forged in your blood. Jung never said you are this or that. He said you are always becoming, not because of when you were born, but because of what you're willing to face. The birth month myth offers you a finished story, but Jung offered you a door, one that opens only when you stop running from your darkness and begin to walk into it. So the real question isn't what archetype were you born under. The real question is, which part of yourself have you been too afraid to meet? Because that part, that forgotten, buried, burning part, is where the real you has been waiting all along. So now you know. Carl Jung never said your birth month defines your personality. He never created a calendar of archetypes. He never gave you a shortcut to your soul. What he gave you was far more dangerous and far more liberating. He gave you a challenge to stop mistaking identity for truth, to stop letting others tell you who you are, to stop living as a role and start becoming a soul. You are not the reborn. You are not the sage. You are not the alchemist of November. You are a battlefield of contradictions. You are 1,000 unlived lives. You are your trauma, your yearning, your silence, your rage. You are everything you've run from and everything you've yet to meet. And that means you are unfinished. You are not fated. You are still being written. Jung's gift wasn't clarity. It was the courage to walk through your own confusion and find meaning on the other side. If someone hands you a label and says, "Here, this is who you are," throw it into the fire. You are not here to be classified. You're here to be transformed. And that transformation doesn't start with your birth date. It starts with a question. Am I willing to face what I've been avoiding in myself? If you are, welcome. This isn't the easy path, but it's the one that's real. If this stirred something in you, subscribe and keep going. The journey inward is just beginning.